Great. Thanks very much. And thanks for coming and listening to us. Um, we're going to be presenting some reflections on our broad approach to our scholarship project that we did last year and another one that we're doing at the moment. We will say a little bit about what we've found so far, but actually most of our presentation this morning is going to be broader reflections on how we've been trying to do what we've been doing. Hopefully you'll find that of interest. So hopefully on the screen you can see our team who are currently involved in this project. My colleague Ola, who will be presenting some point this morning, myself, Jim Lusted, a lecturer in sport and fitness, and we also have 3 students who are involved as student researchers on this project too. Unfortunately, couldn't get a picture from Denise in time, but that's why she's blank. But otherwise, we've got Shannon, and Shannon will be presenting later this afternoon in the session on students if you're interested, and Ola, who is a sport and fitness student. Okay, so just thought we'd give you a really quick snapshot of our first project. So our first project, we wanted to explore very broadly the learning experiences of Black students on our sport and fitness modules. And the rationale for that was because we have an awarding gap between Black students and other students, a persistent one that broadly reflects both sort of school, institutional and sector-wide differences. So our Black students aren't achieving the same degree outcomes and module outcomes as other students. And within sport and fitness, we didn't really have much data. In fact, I don't think we had any other than the quantitative data that everyone has around the experiences of Black students. And so we went out and tried to capture that. We did it in a slightly different way, which we'll talk about shortly, by involving students as partners, as researchers, as collaborators on this program to help us on this project, to help us complete the project. And to cut an extremely long story short, if you look at the yellow boxes on the right hand side, you'll see some of the things that we elicited. So we did focus groups. In the end, we did 2 focus groups with 7 or 8 students, Black students who were on sport fitness modules. The students themselves led those focus groups. They were student only spaces. And broadly speaking, I guess our key finding, to be very general, was that our Black students experienced many of the similar challenges that many students face distance learning programs, particularly around managing their time. Lots of pressures outside of studies that make it difficult for them to focus on their studies, feeling isolated, a lack of belonging, some difficult relationships with both students and tutors. But we felt from this project that Black students felt these challenges more acutely and in slightly different ways, what we call sort of racialized ways. So issues of race and racism exacerbated some of these challenges. So that was a whole big piece of work done in 2 minutes. What we decided to do next, and what we're doing at the moment, is to explore this issue of peer support for Black students during their studies. So students from the focus groups talked about the need and a wish for more support from people like them, people with similar lived experience to them, undergoing the same challenges and issues. Some had found that support very accidentally, and some people talked about the current support mechanisms like WhatsApp groups and Facebook sites, these informal sites, and the formal forums weren't places that they felt particularly welcome in. So we're now exploring what that might look like in terms of a Black students sort of support network for our sport modules. So we've come up with sort of 3 broad approaches that we think we've been following reflecting on what we've been doing. The first is we've taken what we consider to be quite a strategic approach, a developmental approach. The second is a collaborative approach that I've touched upon already. And the third is thinking about it a bit more politically, perhaps, that we're using scholarship in a way to try and disrupt existing practice and long-term processes of exclusion. So we're going to go through those quickly. The first then is taking this strategic and developmental approach. And I suppose on one hand, this is quite obvious, but on the other hand, it sort of occurred to us as we've been doing this that actually, you know, if you want to do scholarship and if you want to instigate change through scholarship, you really need to be strategic and learn from projects, and you can't do everything in one go. I think that's quite often a pitfall that we fall into. You know, we get a piece of funding, we do a piece of research, and there's really nothing you can achieve in a very short space of time. So we've thought about doing our scholarship sort of project in phases. Our first phase was exploratory, as I've described, really just trying to learn and understand what's going on in the situation. And then we're moving into a more consultative phase, looking at trying to get students to help build and design an intervention. Then we'll pilot that intervention sometime, maybe next year. And then we'll evaluate it and probably go right back to the beginning. It's almost cyclical in a way. And I think there's some merit in thinking strategically about this, you know, thinking about the long-term goal of what you're trying to do beyond just completing your praxis or your scholarship project. The second is the collaborative approach that we've talked about, which I know I think Kathy Bova is going to be talking about later, so I don't want to steal her thunder. Indeed, her thunder will be much louder and more impressive than ours. But nonetheless, we wanted to take a staff-student approach for some of these reasons to ensure that students are involved in scholarship, are involved in institutional change, and not just kind of the subjects of that experience. We wanted research to be peer-to-peer wherever possible, so students talking to students, and that has worked extremely effectively so far. And we were driven by a need and a wish to empower students, particularly minoritized students. And we'll talk about that at the end. So just to give you a snippet, I'm going to play this video. This was a recruitment video that two of the students from our first project, Shannon and Fabian, completed. We thought it might be a good way of enticing in students into our project beyond just a bland email. I'm going to play it. If it doesn't work, it's fine. It's only a minute long. If you can't hear it, I'll put the subtitles on.
Hey guys, I'm Fabian.
And I'm Shannon.
And we are students who are taking part in a research project for the members of the sports and fitness team at the Open University.
We are providing a safe, student-only space for our fellow Black students to discuss their learning experiences on the sports and fitness modules and how we can help to support and enhance those learning experiences.
Shannon and I will be running 1 hour focus sessions as we are keen to improve your learning experiences and ensuring you get the best out of your time on the sports and fitness course.
All participants who complete the focus groups will be gifted for their precious time with a £30 High Street voucher.
All you have to do is click the link below, register, and we can get the ball rolling.
Please feel free to get in contact if you have any questions.
There you go. Not sure if you were able to. Ola, could you read here? See? Yeah. Okay, good. So some of you might be able to see that. So you can imagine the enormous benefits of that type of approach in having students speak to students and encourage their involvement and doing all the things on the screen that we had hoped. The final one then is to think about scholarship being a way to disrupt existing practice and indeed existing sort of long-standing structures. I'm going to pass to Ola for this bit.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, so as you can see on the screen there, it's disruptive because we have to look at things differently. We can't not always do the status quo, and especially in this particular scholarship about it being student led, we have really pushed that boundary out. That is actually the students are at the forefront of the research scholarship, and us as lecturers or staff are taking a step behind. So we're not taking the easy option. It's essential that students are paid, and are paid appropriately, because again, that's that issue about power relations and not taking their time for granted. It is about prioritizing change. What is it about action research? What is it? What was so obvious to the students that they felt that peer network between Black students was more relevant than it would have been the support networks that the university had provided? Why was that? So that's one of the issues we're trying to look at too. It's about challenging people, challenging ourselves, challenging the students, challenging the organization through practice, through scholarship. Why hasn't this been done before? What are the key issues here? We talked about, Jim said at the start about the Black awarding gap. It is that consistently poor that the question is, why haven't we looked at this in detail up to now? Why are we not willing to but to ask ourselves those difficult questions of ourselves and others? And that's essentially what this disruptive scholarship is looking at.
3 minutes remaining.
Okay, flipping plan relations, yes, students are becoming the leaders in this particular section, but who's learning from who? Are we as lecturers learning from the students? Yes, we are. Are we taking positive action? Yes, it is. And the principles of redistribution is that we are taking our privileged, what we will call privileged position, to try and assist the students into them becoming what you will call privileged in that situation as well. Next slide, Jim. Okay, these are points that came from Shannon. Shannon's not here today. So again, just looking through those points, I think the key point is about the students' input as the project develops, and that has been consistent all the way through. Jim and I and the other AL members of staff who were on the previous project is about supporting the students, but allowing their input to be the main thing that is driving the scholarship project forward. Do you want to move on to the next slide, Jim?
Yep, I'll do the next slide. So we're nearly coming to the end. It's very difficult to get across the complexities of working with students on scholarship projects in the time that we have. But there are some things to consider in terms of sort of I initially put this as a sort of continuum between, do you view the student as a partner or the student as an assistant? Do you allow the student to do what they want, to give them total control over the project, or do you tell them what to do? Are they professional colleagues, or do you still have that staff-student relationship? And what I've done is actually moved the arrows this way as a way of encouraging us to think about pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone from the right-hand side, which is what you instinctively want to do when you're working with students, and actually find ways to provide students with more power, more authority, more control. And it's not easy, but that's the position that we feel we are starting from. I think that's important.
If you could be wrapping up now, please.
Yep, this is the last slide. Just going back to where we are. So yeah, we are now about to do some focus groups again with Black students. Hopefully we can recruit some, and that will be a student-only space. In fact, a black student-only space, and that will be an opportunity for students to discuss the types of peer support that they would like, what platforms that might take, or take part in, Facebook, those types of things. We really want students to lead that conversation, and then from those focus groups, I'll come back to Ola and I, and we will between us design some kind of plan for a student network that we will pilot and then see how it goes.